Daniel, what Elon Musk also went on to say yesterday in terms of Starlink, for example, is it's going to take about $10 billion until they'll be able to be positive free cash flow, and investments could go as high as $30 billion. How do you do all of this at some point profitably?
So I think that SpaceX with Starlink took on probably what's going to be the biggest space project that you could possibly do. But when you think of the business case, I mean, connecting 4 billion people, which as of today are not connected to the internet, that's actually a very, very big business case there. So although there's a lot of upfront investments needed for all of this, I think towards the end, actually providing internet, high-speed internet and high bandwidth internet on a global scale is probably going to be the single biggest business case in the globe.
In terms of launching profitably, at the moment, SpaceX isn't expecting really to be a profitable company. You're basically going to be competing with them. You're talking about launching pretty small satellites into orbit. That's where the market is ultimately going to be. Are you going to be a utility or are you going to be a profitable company?
So we're fully privately funded, and that also means that we're after a full commercial business case. So we obviously aspire to be fully profitable ourselves. And based on the components, the rocket engines and the structures and basically the vehicles we've built so far, we're on very well track in actually hitting our cost so that we can also serve the customers we've already signed on so far. But our vehicle with 1,000 kilogram of payload capability is comparably small to the very, very big rockets. So we are really aiming to lowering the cost for the small satellites, which as of today are paying something like $30,000 or even $40,000 per kilogram, which we really want to try to bring down.
So at the end of the day, are you going to be in the business of rockets and then just people use you to transport stuff? Or are you also going to try and launch your own satellites and do something more like the Starlink, which is then going to bring broadband to people that don't have it?
So we're focusing right now 100% on the current rocket. This is really what we're after. And I mean, it opens up space. And I think this is really why we founded Isar, to enable low-cost space access for small satellites, but also satellite constellations to be able to flexibly put satellites in orbit. We're so far very well funded towards achieving that goal. What comes into the future, we'll have to see. But really, the access to space is the first part of the entire value chain of the space industry. And everything that actually comes after that is basically dependent on the rocket part.
You're joining us because of the Catalyst program that we're having here at Bloomberg. You're trying to do something that we've never really done here in Europe before, and that is to produce a low-cost launch vehicle that will allow European companies, global companies, to be able to put, as you say, small satellites into orbit. You're choosing Norway to launch your satellite, your rockets from. Like, I've been to Norway a few times. The weather's not that great. We've seen a series of failed launches over at SpaceX because of the weather. What's it going to look like in Norway?
Actually, very, very high up in Norway, so already above the polar circle. Weather is actually not that bad. And there have been already thousands of sounding rockets and high-altitude rockets launched so far from the Andøya spaceport, where we secured our exclusive launch pad. And so the decision to go actually to Norway for us was manifold. One, definitely that it was based in mainland Europe. So although not part of the European Union, it's actually a very, very short way for our European customers to actually ship their satellites to the launch site, and that we can access all of the polar and sun-synchronous orbits. On top of that, we're obviously also going to have different launch sites. We're talking with the French space agency CNES about launching our vehicle also out of Kourou in French Guyana, so we can really offer our customers the entire breadth of orbits and orbit inclinations. But Norway really also was the first one to actually be able to host a launcher our size out of Europe.
Mm-hmm. Daniel, before we go, you said you're fully funded. Fully funded till when? And at what point are you going to need to get more money?
So we're fully funded towards the first few launches. We're definitely going to be able also to take a hit should actually our first launch not be successful, which is something I think that's definitely a reasonable case to also take into consideration. But after we actually are going towards successful launches, we're actually able to fully finance ourselves with the customers, which are already paying as of today. So we can, with the paying customers, basically build other vehicles and then actually conduct the missions for our customers. We would only actually go towards the financial markets if we want to do a ramp up of our production, or maybe look towards a new rocket.